Let's bring in tonight's panel on this. Vince Casale is the founder of the Casale Group, a Republican political consulting firm. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. And Basil Smyko, political strategist, adjunct professor at Columbia University, and the man single-handedly bringing the bow tie back.
Absolutely.
Welcome
my grown man on.
Is the president losing, from a PR standpoint, we'll get into the numbers in a little bit, but from a PR standpoint, is the president losing the sequester battle? I mean, it hasn't been as bad as he was saying it was going to be.
Yes. He's definitely losing it, and the reason he's losing it is it's almost a self-inflicted wound, is how I look at it. He spent all this time talking about what was going to happen when the sequester kicked in, and let's be honest, it kicked in, and I don't think anybody has seen any major change in their life at this point right now.
I don't think he's losing it at all. I think if we go back and pay close attention to the words that the president used, he was warning of what will come down the road. He didn't say that these, and I mean, think about this. We're criticizing him because we're not feeling pain right now. Think about that. It's kind of warped. You know, we want to feel the pain immediately. It's coming.
I think he put a little more urgency than down the road.
I agree
when he was
did.
putting
I agree he did put some
that
urgency there. But I don't think he's gone as far as we think he has.
And look, you know, some of these cuts really won't come into effect until maybe April when we start furloughing federal workers and things like that. So we actually have a little time before we start to feel some of these cuts. And the Machiavellian in me thinks that perhaps this was done purposefully so he could make some cuts and then go ahead and blame it on the Republicans. I don't know how true that is, which is perhaps why there isn't the sense of urgency coming from certain areas, but I still think some of the pain will get felt over time.
But isn't there a potential functional problem here in that Republicans will be able to say, look, we said that there was room in the government for cuts. We've made some cuts and it hasn't really hurt anybody's life all that much. Why not make more cuts?
It does give credibility to that argument. That's the problem with this. But as Basil said, let's look at the state of Virginia a few weeks from now when you have federal employees that are furloughed 1 day a week, and let's see if they say there's no pain.
One of the biggest problems that I see is also for the president's talking points. You know, he was at the State of the Union talking about preschool, for example, and you know, trying to put an emphasis on more preschool programs, yet these sequester cuts make significant cuts to Head Start programs, for example. So it's, I think, a long-term problem with the president's messaging. Who knows if it's actually going to be a bigger problem than that.
You know, there's another element that I thought might indicate that the White House is losing this fight, and it comes from the budget fight that's shaping up in Congress, not for this year, but for next year's budget. Word of the House GOP plans for the budget is already coming out. Paul Ryan and company are going to look to get this, balance the budget in 10 years, and do it while increasing defense spending, all with massive spending cuts and no new taxes on revenue. By some estimates, more than 20% of all domestic spending would have to go on the GOP on the chopping block to fit that hole in the needle. And here's the challenge for the White House. In the abstract, people love spending cuts. Latest poll we got here, 6 in 10 voters say they support spending cuts. But if you ask them if they want to cut specific programs, these are the percentages of people who say they want to keep the level steady or increase the spending in those different areas. 60, 80% for 18 different areas. If we're talking about a balanced budget, isn't that a victory lap for the GOP? I mean, that's the ultimate starting point in their negotiation.
Sure. But they've been saying it all along, is that we have to spend less. The government needs to spend less. They're going to be able to now have the time and the opportunity to put together a budget that spends less, and then let the White House and let the Democrats in Congress add to that budget, or at least attempt to add to that budget, and argue why. And it actually, and I was critical last week about the way the Republicans were moving into the sequester, and they have, I think now, post-sequester, positioned themselves where they want to be, as the party of less government, less spending, and to put more control back to the people.
You know, in my interview with Sean Spicer, one of the answers that he gave when I asked for a number, how many cuts do we need? What's the magic number? He said, until we get the debt under control. Is there a sense that maybe there might be some moving goalposts on this? Let's say the GOP in the House got everything that they wanted, that they would come back a little bit later and be like, well, now we want a little bit more. We want even more cuts and even more cuts. Is there some concern about that?
Yeah, and you know, I actually think it's a lot of moving goalposts, and I think the American people are actually getting tired of it. We're not talking about policy anymore. We're not talking about gun control anymore. We're not really talking about immigration anymore. This has been occupying our time, and the president actually said this several months ago. You know, he didn't want to do government. He didn't want to govern in short-term increments, and I get that. But that's pretty much all that we have. And so it is a lot of moving goalposts.
But I think they would have a lot more credibility, the Republicans. You can't cut everything else except for defense. I mean, it just, with Paul Ryan's budget and so on, it just doesn't fly. It just doesn't work. And again, as you show those polls, people support cutting spending in government until you cut their program, the program that they care about. And we'll see which president and which House will actually get this done.
But I also think before we talk, and again, the polling says what it says. Let's see what those cuts are to the program. I mean, and again, this is all part of the PR game that's going to lead up to it. We heard the PR game leading up to the sequester. The sequester happens. Everybody expected these overnight disasters. They didn't happen. So what are the actual cuts? The devil is in the details here. So what are the cuts to those programs? What are we actually cutting out of programs? Let me tell you, I'm sure there's a lot of government programs full of all kinds of waste and abuse and things that could be cut back on.
Doesn't mean they're bad programs, though.
It doesn't mean they're bad programs, but there's more efficient ways to be running programs and run them better.
Somehow I have a feeling this debate is going to continue, and it's going to continue online. If you'll join us, just head to Facebook or to Twitter, sound off, head to both of them, see if we care. Though, is the White House losing the sequester fight? That's our question for you to answer. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn to the scandal that wasn't, that sex scandal involving Senator Robert Menendez and Dominican prostitutes. That may now be over. One of the alleged prostitutes came forward saying she was paid to lie. That and more as we get into some regional politics next.